Have you ever wondered how top producers and mixers finish songs so fast? It might take you days or weeks to get an idea into your DAW, and months or even years to finish the song. Finishing songs quickly isn't just about talent or having the best gear. The real difference often comes down to workflow, and one of the most effective tools professionals use to stay creative and focused is something you can set up right now. In this video, I'm going to show you how templates can speed up your creative process by giving you a focused, organized starting point every time you open your DAW.
To create a template, you first need to understand how routing works. Routing is just telling your DAW where you want the audio to flow. When you create an audio track, by default, the audio is sent to the master. Depending on your output setting, the audio will then be sent to your speakers or your headphones. Open your DAW's preferences and click on Audio. Select either your laptop speakers or your headphones. If you're using an audio interface, select your interface from the drop-down box. Your audio interface headphones or your speakers are not automatically an option like it was for your laptop. You must set this up. Click on Song Setup and then click on Input and Output Setup. Now we're going to tell the DAW what output of your audio interface will use. Most home budget interfaces only have two mono outputs for a left speaker and a right speaker. Select 1 and 2 from the outputs. If your interface has multiple outputs and you want to switch from using your speakers to your headphones, click Add Stereo and select 3 and 4 output. Now, if you're planning to use a microphone or an instrument, select Inputs. Most home interfaces only have 2 mono inputs, so you can connect a microphone and a guitar line, but you can't have, for instance, a double mic'd acoustic and additional vocal mic, because that would be 3 inputs. Make sense? Cool. Select Add Mono, then 1, and Add Mono, then 2 for the second input, and click OK. Now, your DAW might have a feature called a listening bus, which you can apply a room corrective plugin like SonarWorks or an analyzing plugin like Metric AB. This channel will bypass the master, so when you're finished with your song and bounce it, the plugins won't affect the sound. Now that you have your input and your output configured, the audio will go from your track to your master, then to your headphones or your speakers. Let's say that you have multiple tracks and you want to apply effects to all the tracks at once before hitting the master. You can create something called a mix bus. The mix bus will sum together all the audio before hitting the master. You might ask, well, why can't I do all the processing on the master? It creates a cleaner workflow by separating the mix processing from the final mastering tasks like limiting, and makes exporting easier when sending your mix to a mastering engineer or creating alternate versions like a sync or an instrumental mix. It's especially important for metering if your DAW doesn't have a dedicated listening bus. There's a technique called Top-Down Mixing where you start all of your processing on your mix bus first. This will allow you to shape and color your mix from the start. As a result, all of your mixing decisions done on groups or individual tracks will be influenced by the mix bus. The idea is you're beginning with the end in mind. I like to think of it as painting, top to bottom, and your colors bleeding down. Typical plugins used are going to be console emulations. This is for general tone that can complement the style of your song and adds hardware color and saturation to bring out instruments in the mix. An EQ can be used to bring out the highs or the lows on an otherwise dark or overly bright track. Compression is typically used to glue a track together, but it could also be used for several things, such as bringing the mids forward in the track to bring out the vocal, or you can time the compressor to the BPM to make the drums groove even more with the track. When you're applying processing to the mix bus, it doesn't have to be a lot. A couple of dB is enough because it's going to affect all of the other tracks, so a little goes a long way. Since you're making broad strokes at the beginning, it gets your mix closer to where you want it to be and should make mixing faster. When you're working on a song, things can get messy fast. Tracks start to pile up and your computer can start to lag if you're not careful. That's why it's a good idea to stay organized from the start. Group similar tracks like vocals, drums, guitar, synth, bass, and effects into folders to keep things tidy. Give each group a color so you can spot them easily in your mix or arrangement view. And instead of adding the same effect to every single track, Route your groups to a bus so you can process them together. It saves CPU and makes mixing way easier. Within these groups, you can create subgroups. For example, if you have multiple tracks of the same instrument, like grouping all the background vocals within the vocals group, or separating the rhythm and lead guitars within their own subgroup of the guitars group. This gives you more precise control over each element before they're summed into the main group bus. Sometimes you want to apply an effect like reverb or delay to multiple tracks without loading the plugin on each one. That's where effect synths come in. Instead of inserting reverb directly on a vocal, a guitar, or a snare separately, you can create one effects channel, put your reverb there, and send any track you want to it. This not only saves CPU, but also creates a more unified, natural sounding space because everything is running through the same effect. There's a few types of bus channels in your DAW, and it can definitely get a little confusing trying to figure out the difference between a bus, an effects channel, and an aux channel. But they're all the same thing, they just have different names because of the purpose they serve. When you're grouping tracks together, like all your guitars or vocals, we call that a bus channel. If you're sending some signal to a reverb, delay, or other time-based effects, that's what we usually refer to as an effects channel. You're blending in the effect alongside with the original signal using a send knob. An aux channel, on the other hand, is often used for things like setting up a separate headphone mix or routing audio to and from outboard gear. It's still a bus channel, but it's being used for utility routing like this. We usually call it an aux. By creating buses, you can easily adjust the volume, mute, or solo all the tracks in a group with a single button or fader and even automate them. Using bus faders not only speeds up mixing, but also helps you find a better balance. Once all your buses are set up, you can create an all-music bus to route all of your instrument tracks, allowing you to separate the vocals from the instruments for even more control and easier balancing. There's one more track that would make a huge difference in your workflow, especially when it comes to final mixes and revisions, and that's a print track. A print track is an audio track that records the output of your master bus, or any bus you choose, directly inside your DAW. Think of it as taking a snapshot of your full mix in real time before it leaves your session. This allows you to create post edits and compare mix revisions more accurately. You might be asking, but why would you want to do this when you can just bounce your mix to a file? Here's the thing, some plugins introduce subtle variations every time you play the track. This is especially common with instruments that are designed to feel more human-like, like modeled guitars, analog style saturation, or certain tape emulations. Even if you don't touch a thing, your bounce might sound slightly different each time. Now that your routing and organization is all set up, the next step you need to make sure is your template supports a fast and effective workflow. Having a few essential plugins preloaded can speed up your workflow and help you hit the ground running creatively. Whether it's EQ, compressors, or effects you always reach for, having each ready to go means you're not breaking your flow searching through menus every time you open a project. But not every session has the same goal. Sometimes you're producing, other times you're recording vocals, and sometimes you're just strictly mixing. That's why it can be a smart move to create separate templates tailored to each stage. A producing template might have your favorite virtual instruments and creative effects ready to go. A vocal recording template can be clean and simple, optimized for low latency and vocal chain processing. A mixing template might be fully organized with routing, buses, mastering plugins, and your favorite channel strips. Each template serves a different purpose and helps you stay focused on the task at hand without getting distracted or overloading your CPU. One of the easiest ways to figure out which plugins or instruments belong in your production template is actually finishing a beat first, completely. Don't worry about the template at this time, just create freely. Once you're done, go back and delete the arrangement, the MIDI clips, audio regions, automation, leave that all blank, but keep the instruments and the effect tracks that you used to build the beat. Now you got a ready to go sound set that's tailored to your style. The next time you sit down to make a beat, especially in the same genre or vibe, you're not starting from scratch. You already got your go-to synths, drum racks, and effects chains dialed in. And if you spend time crafting a custom synth patch or a unique drum rack or a special vocal chain, don't let it just sit in some random project that you're never going to open again. Reinsert that into your template so it's ready to go the next time inspiration hits. This just doesn't save time. This is how you start building your own sound as a producer. When you reuse and redefine your favorite tools, your tracks start to develop a signature sound. That's how your style and identity are formed, through repetition and refinement. If you're an artist who records and mixes your own vocals, having a dialed-in template is essential. It's the difference between capturing inspiration right away or losing the vibe fiddling with settings. If you're recording vocals for an artist, whether you're an engineer or a producer, you need a session that's designed to make them feel confident and creative the moment they walk in. Your vocal recording template should be clean, intuitive, and optimized for low latency monitoring, so the artist can hear themselves without delay. That means avoiding heavy plugins during tracking and focusing on vibe over polish. Most importantly, your setup should never break the creative flow. The artist shouldn't be waiting around for you to build a session, name tracks, or route effects. They should be able to walk in, put their headphones on, and start recording within minutes. A solid vocal recording template isn't just a time saver. It shows that you're professional, prepared, and focused on capturing the best performance possible. A great template should already have labeled vocal tracks for leads, doubles, stacks, harmonies, and ad-libs routed into folders or buses so everything stays organized. Use a light vocal chain with a touch of EQ, compression, and maybe a hint of reverb or delay on a return channel. It doesn't need to sound like a finished mix, it just needs to feel good in their headphones. Once your tracks and basic effects are in place, the next step is setting up a cue mix. This is a custom headphone mix the artist hears while recording. Your cue mix is just as important as your vocal chain. If the artist doesn't feel inspired by what they're hearing in their headphones, it's going to affect their performance. Most audio interfaces and DAWs let you create separate headphone mixes using aux-ins or dedicated cue outputs. This way, the artist can hear more of themselves or more of the beat without having to mess up your main mix. For example, maybe you want the artist's vocal a little louder in the headphones or a bit more reverb to give them a vibe, but you don't want to print that to the track. That's where a cue mix comes in. Go to your audio I/O setup, add a new stereo output and call it something like headphones, and make sure to check the cue mix box. In the mixer, you'll see a cue mix section on each track with independent faders. These control what the artist hears, not what you hear. Set it to pre-fader mode so the artist hears a consistent signal, even if you're tweaking levels in the mix. You can also send reverb to the cue mix to give the vocal a little space without printing it to the actual recording. Now, an alternative setup, if you got an artist who insists on hearing themselves exactly how they're going to sound on the record, you can create a monitoring aux with a full vocal chain. This aux bypasses the mix bus entirely and goes straight to their headphone output, giving them that polished vocal sound while tracking. The big benefit is zero latency monitoring because the plugins are processed post-input and the dry signal is being recorded clean. This helps the artist stay locked in without any delay or disconnect from their performance. But here's the trade-off. Since the plugins aren't on the actual recording track, none of the sound is being printed. If something crashes or their aux chain changes later, it might be tough to recreate the exact tone they're recorded to. It also puts more load on your CPU, and if you're stacking up heavy plugins, that can introduce performance issues in bigger sessions. So this setup could still work if you don't have the most powerful computer if you bounce out the beat and record to a 2-track. Now, when you're building your vocal tracking template, be intentional about the plugins you're using. Some plugins sound amazing, but they're just not practical for recording. One of my favorite plugins to mix with is a free plugin called Fire the Gold by Acoustica Audio. It's a preamp modeled after a classic Neve preamp, and it does something special to the vocals. It pulls that muffled, cloudy sound right off the top and gives the vocals more presence and clarity. I use it on every vocal mix, but I never use it while tracking. Why? Because it's CPU heavy. If you load it during a session with low latency monitoring, it's going to cause lag or glitches that throw the artist off. When recording, you want to keep the chain as lean as possible. Use only what's absolutely essential. For example, if you're recording a rap artist and auto-tune is part of their sound, yeah, you want to use that. No questions asked. But something like Ozone Vocal Synth 2, as cool as it is, shouldn't be on your tracking chain. That kind of plugin is better left for post-production when you're shaping the vibe and tone of the mix. Tracking sessions are all about feel and flow, not final polish. So build a vocal chain that's light, responsive, and supports the artist's performance. Then save all your fancy boutique plugins for mixdown. If you regularly work with artists in different genres, consider creating genre-specific templates with different vocal chain effects and headphone mixes, because what works for rap vocals won't always feel right for a singer-songwriter or an R&B vocalist. Every artist is different. Some want a dry vocal, some hate the sound of their voice and want it to be washed in reverb, and some want to record with autotune. It ultimately comes down to what setup is going to help the artist perform the best in front of the mic. A good mixing template isn't about locking in choices ahead of time. It's about making your life easier once the real work starts. It's there to cut down on repetitive stuff and speed up your tasks. You're not building a mix, you're building a workflow. Now, before we even open up your template, your prep work should already be done. That means your tracks are labeled, cleaned up, noise is removed, vocals are tuned, and everything is set in the pocket. The mixing template isn't about editing, it's about actually mixing. If you skip the prep work and jump right in, you're dragging that mess into the mix. And even before you start mixing, ask yourself one simple question. What kind of mix am I doing? Am I just enhancing what's already there, or am I completely reinventing the mix? Knowing that from the start keeps you focused so you're not second guessing yourself halfway through the mix. And from there, bring in a few reference mixes to keep your ears honest. I like to use metric A/B to compare and analyze the tracks. Load up the original mix and a few tracks that match the genre and style of the song you're going for. Level match them and keep checking back often. Your ears will lie to you. References won't, because everyone's mix sounds good to them until they compare it to a chart-topping mix. Before I do anything else, I gain stage using the Normalizer by Hornet's plugin to make sure all my tracks are hitting analog style plugins at their calibrated sweet spot. Plus, it helps me keep a consistent loudness throughout the mix, so I'm not getting tricked into thinking something sounds better just because it's louder. Now, before you dive into plugins, start with a static mix, just volume and pan, no EQ and compression, nothing fancy, just make the balance of the instruments feel good. Once it's dialed in, bounce that version and bring it back into the session into metric A/B. That way you got a clean reference to compare later, and it keeps you grounded so you know if your final mix is actually better or just different. Now, let's talk about what's actually happening in the template. Every track has my go-to plugins already loaded: EQ, compression, saturation, the usual suspects. But they're all bypassed by default, so it doesn't waste CPU at the start, and I'm not committing to anything before I hear what the track actually needs. It just saves time when I do need them, and I'm not digging through menus or plugin folders in the middle of a creative flow. Same thing goes for the effects synths. I got all my main synth effects loaded up and ready to go. A room verb, plate, hall, quarter note, 8-note delay, parallel compression, everything is labeled and routed but turned off until I decide to use it. And finally, everything is routed to the buses: vocals, synths, guitars, bass, drums, and effects. That way I can shape the big picture before I even touch the individual elements. It makes balancing way faster and keeps me focused on the overall sound, not just tweaking one snare for 20 minutes. Templates are just the starting point. The real time saver is building your own presets. And if you're already reaching for the same plugins the same way every single time, just save it. That way you're not rebuilding the same setup over and over again. You're just pulling from what you already know that works. And your DAW has hotkeys, and if it supports macros, even better. This is how you speed things up and cut down on repetitive stuff. Instead of clicking through the same steps over and over again, create a macro and you can trigger entire chains or actions with a single keystroke. The key is to be mindful and to never do the same thing twice. A solid mixing template isn't just about speed, it's about freeing up your brain. When all the repetitive stuff is already handled, routing, effect sends, your go-to chains, every macro, you're not wasting energy and time on setup.
Templates just don't save you time. They keep your creative energy focused on the music and not on technical distractions. A template is a workflow that supports your creativity. It's customizable. It can be filled with all your favorite plugins or just the routing. But the point is, you'll spend less time on setup and more time on making music. The goal isn't to box you in, but to free you up. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment, and I'll see you on the next one.